So welcome everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for taking time out of your diaries, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, to come and be a part of our knowledge sharing monthly collab session. Sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, perhaps a glass of wine, something to enjoy. But today is really all about sharing some knowledge with you. It's a gift from LRMG, and our guests today, we've got Koopman and Sune with us from the MMH Group. And I'm now going to hand over to Omri, our managing executive. Over to you, Arms.
Thanks very much, Nadine. Exciting today. We created this platform of a collaboration really to showcase and to share success stories and to help the broader community learning in HR in South Africa and Africa really find winning recipes for adding value to organizations, for delivering impact within business. And Koopman and Sune have a really winning recipe here, which, like any good recipe, is best when it's shared. Hearing the story and working with Koopman and Sune on the presentation, or at least just being on the sideline, allowing them to tell their story. You know, implementing a new technology is daunting, even in a small organization. It's properly scary in an organization with 16,000 people, 18 business units, and multiple existing systems already in place. So this presentation and their story is really filled with nuggets and tips and tricks on valuable insights, how to go about doing that in a really successful way. And so we thought, what better way and platform to share what they've learned with all of you, some of you embarking on journeys like this, as you add on to your ecosystem or you engage with new potential partners. So we encourage questions in the chat. We may not pause at every moment, but we'll certainly collect them and look to include them at the end. But Koopman and Sune prepared a bunch of really informative slides. So what I'll do is I'll just steer a couple of questions as we go and ensure that we're picking out the lessons and learnings, of which there are many, but really allow you to tell the story. And I think the first place for us to start is really to articulate where were the problems, what were the struggles that your organization was facing, and why did you choose to implement a learning technology across the group?
Oh, thanks, Omri and Nadine and LRMG team for giving us the space also to share our story in this way. Like you mentioned, we have created a pretty successful recipe, but it's only because we understand who's going to be enjoying the fruits of that success. And I think the message really from the outset is it's got to be contextualized for your environment. So even though we've managed to achieve 90% unique logins since just over a year, it's really because we spent so much time trying to understand what problems we were aiming to solve. And the first one really was that, and to set the context as well for you, is that we are a 17,000 employee strong organization, and each business unit range from 14 to 18 independent businesses at any given point as the organization structures itself. And so the first issue is really that there were multiple learning platforms in use across the group. And again, in some instances, that's fine, but so we are operate as a federated business model. So really that means that we are at a group level influencers of technology, as opposed to, you know, being able to say this is the platform that everybody across the group will use. And when Sune and I started, it was 3 years ago, there was many different learning platforms in use. And again, that's fine in most instances. our business units were at different levels of digital maturity, of learning maturity, and they were making use of platforms that made sense for them at the time. But what we needed to start doing is to get to a place where we could centralize a lot of the learning, to be able to scale it efficiently and sustainably, and to be able to measure and track completion and ROI and really impact in the longer term. Because we are one group, one of the serious issues we had really up front was around tracking completion of compliance training. And as a highly regulated, being in a highly regulated industry, we needed to be able to measure compliance completion. Now, I know that's not the be all and end all of learning, but it was a serious challenge that the business faced at the time, which was made more challenging by the fact that there were so many learning platforms in use. Our second issue was that there were multiple learning platforms, but they weren't very user-friendly and they weren't well integrated. So, you know, things like being able to track and measure individual performance, being able to personalize learning experiences, even things like very basic gamification and leaderboards, discussion forums, those systems didn't have those in place. And so we weren't meeting employees and learners where they needed to be met in terms of their digital experiences. And then our group system that we did have was both expensive and it was ineffective. So the platform that we procured in the early part of 2020 didn't meet the needs of the group who had accelerated their digital efforts so much during COVID that we actually had matured faster than we realized the platform was going to be able to keep up with. And so we were sitting with this rather complex dilemma of needing to find a system that met multiple business units along their various maturity curves, that was cost effective, that was user friendly, and that would solve a lot of our kind of logistical and day-to-day and operational needs as well.
Big challenges and great opportunity. I think one view of the world is what are the things that we want to solve for, but what in addition to this were you trying to achieve? What were the benefits that you were looking for in the success criteria for implementing a new technology in the group?
Yeah. So we spent quite a bit of time trying to understand, okay, if we understand what the problem is, what is it that a new system will solve? What is it that a new system or new technology will be able to do for us once we've successfully implemented and launched? So the first was that we needed to be able to consolidate all of our group-wide compliance training into one centralized place. And in addition to that, be able to offer other kinds of content and training as well at a group level. And if anybody works in a federated business model, you know that if you've got to implement one thing 18 times, that's not sustainable and it's really not an efficient use of time and resources and energy. So that was really the first point, was that we need to be able to do things more efficiently and sustainably. And the second success criteria was really, whatever system we choose, it needs to be able to integrate. We need to be able to enable single sign-on, and we need to be able to integrate it with our human capital system so that we're not manually uploading spreadsheets of user data. We needed to be copy compliant. And so there were a number of current technological integrations that it needed to be able to do. But we also needed to account for the unknown. And so we needed a system where we could partner with the platform providers or the partners to be able to work with them to advise as well on what we needed as our needs evolved and as we matured. The third one was that we needed to be able to plug and play. And so we realized that custom content development is also not a sustainable way of delivering learning across the group. And so we needed to be able to upload different types of content, integrate external content libraries as well, and be able to do that in a push and a pull way. So for employees to be able to pick and choose and enroll into courses across a range of different skills and topics, but also for us to be able to push content to them based on their personalized kind of choices. And then the fourth one is, again, to really account for what do our learners or our employees need now versus what will they need in the future, and what do they don't know that they will need, but that we can cater for anyway. And so user experience and really digital trends was something that was quite important to us, not just learning trends, but also from a technology perspective, that we will partner with us or implement a system that will move with us as we go and be able to meet our employees wherever they might be in their learning and development journey.
Even with quite clearly articulated success criteria and struggles that you want to solve for in the business, spoiled for choice really today with great learning technologies and learning platforms.
Yeah.
And vendor selection in itself is going to be quite a tricky part of this process. Your process was quite impressive. So could you share with us how you went about identifying and then ultimately selecting a vendor?
Absolutely.
Sure. Thank you, Omri. And thanks, Kira. Now that Kira has painted a bit of a picture for us on the background and the context and our project objectives, I thought it would be quite interesting to show you a very high-level timeline of the project to date and some of our key activities and milestones from, as you can see, as early as July 2020. So this is when I think of the project as starting, because it was July 2020, as Kira said, COVID-19 pandemic, everyone was really accelerating digital and trying to move learning online as fast as possible. So did Momentum Metropolitan. They acquired this new system, a group LMS system. But it was only in November of that year that Kira joined the organization and really our digital learning team was formed. So we're all quite new in the organization. I think in corporate years, that's quite young. But then one of our team's main objectives became to drive this learning platform, get business units to adopt the system, and eventually for it to become the group-wide system. That's also why I joined in early 2021. So our project was this phased rollout of the group learning system. But then the approach was quite different. We thought we would pick a few business units, early adopters. They will use the system and kind of model the success of the system to other business units who would then come on board, and eventually we'd all be on the single system. But unfortunately, that wasn't a success. The approach didn't work. And I think, as Kira mentioned, for many reasons, it wasn't really meeting our requirements. I think businesses quickly advanced what they needed from a system. So maybe the system just, wasn't as advanced as we needed. And so instead of a joint move to a single system, we actually had pushback and kind of resistance to digital learning, or maybe just that system in particular. So Kira and I really noticed the need to make a change quickly, and we started putting together a business case that would demonstrate and convince the business of the value of a really future fit learning system, not only for learners' experience, but also for the business to track and measure learning. And what we did is we spent a lot of time with business units. We already had, as part of trying to convince them to use a learning system, we had spent time to understand their needs, their pain points, their dreams for a system. And we did some research. We met with other providers, did a lot of research of what is out there and what a future fit learning system would look like. And then we made a case for the business to embrace this endeavor and essentially to start over, to find and buy and really try and implement a new system. So as you can imagine, that was not an easy feat. People were really skeptical. They needed there was a big need for change management. But I do feel that the work that we did up front, the work that we did to understand what people needed, really helped us to then select the right vendor and to implement quickly. So you'll see then in March of last year, we started the vendor selection or evaluation and selection process, again, over 4 months. And it seems impossible that it took that long. But I think why that was is because we had a really large extensive panel of people who evaluated the vendor and finally approved the site or the system that we selected. We wanted people to feel that they were involved and they were helping to choose the system that they would ultimately champion and use. And again, that was the reason that we could, when we chose the system in August of 2022, launch that same system to the entire group in September. So just a month later. And like Kira said, we're just under 17,000 employees. So we flipped the approach. We launched to the whole group all at once. All employees could access the group-wide learning. And then in November, so we really ran a fun engagement campaign, and we had really great early adoption. We'll share some success stories about that. But in November, we then started the phase 2 of the project, which was enhancing the system, further integrating with other content libraries and other of our Momentum Metropolitan tech environments, and then also the business unit onboarding. So systematically bringing on business units and their specific content. And then in September, we celebrated our first birthday, which meant that we could, as a team, reflect on the process, what we would have done differently, what we were very happy with. And I think that's what's brought us here. So very excited to share some of those lessons with everyone today. Yeah.
Thanks, Sune. You're going to share with us a little bit of the detail
Sure.
around the vendor selection itself.
Yeah. So if we look at this vendor evaluation process in March, I'm thinking anyone who might be starting that process would want to know what it is that we were looking at and what process we followed and maybe why it took so long. So as you know, we started with the business case, which meant that we already had a very good idea of what it is that we were looking for from a system, and that stakeholders across the business have approved the initiation of the project. So we issued an RFP. We received about 10 proposals, which we then evaluated. And for this proposal evaluation process, I just pulled out some of the criteria that we looked at when we were looking at the proposals. Again, like a vast panel of different voices from different points of view, looking at them. But we first looked at the proposal quality, that functional requirements checklist that we put together as a group. They had to kind of answer to our request. And then also group IT has very specific technical and of course security requirements that they needed to respond to. We then made a shorter list, looked at the group, the company or the vendor's financial information and their financial standing. And then finally, we looked at the cost of the solution and the employment equity status of the vendor. So you can see there are lots of different views to look at the same solution from. Kira will talk about that a bit more. We then invited the shortlisted bidders to do demonstrations to the panel, which we also evaluated. We also, for a shorter list, had very in-depth technical kind of evaluation from IT. And something that I thought was really valuable was reference calls, where we spent time with current or previous clients of the shortlisted vendors. These were the top 3, just to hear how their support experience was and also how their implementation experience was, because we knew we had that hurdle very soon and in a very short time period to accomplish. And then some of the business units had, even after all the demos and all the evaluations, they still wanted to see some of their very specific use cases demonstrated on the platforms. So our vendors were kind enough to give us sandbox access and give us some more ways to test the systems. We then were happy to make a final recommendation, which of course had to go through some rounds of review and approval by various forums. And finally, we chose the final vendor and went on to commercial negotiations.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out that I think you can go to the next slide, actually, because it is on there. We spent a lot of time with the business units understanding what their needs were. And so each of these points in the table, there are additional features and functionality that sit behind it. And so part of our initial assessment was, can your platform do all of these things? And the second leg of that was on the IT side. So is it able to integrate? Does it have the requisite level of security? How all of those things managed? And so we had a very extensive list of things that any platform needed to. But having said that, we also realized that there is never going to be, even if you custom build a platform, there's never going to be one system that can do everything, and especially not for multiple business units and thousands of employees. And so the approach that we had to adopt from the beginning, and at any given point our panel was between 15 and 30 people from across the group, is we had to adopt the 80-20 principle. So of the features, what is a non-negotiable, what can you live without in this first initial phase, or the first year, first couple of years? What are the things that you can kind of let go of, so that we could get to some semblance of, if it averages out across everybody's requirements, these are the things that we actually need. But it was important for us to first document everything. And so that formed a big part of our selection criteria. And so even when it comes to things like shortlisting the proposals, the list of things that the system can do was just one small component by comparison. Things like, are they a financially feasible organization? Can they actually support 17,000 employees? And then as a final point was around cost. And so our choice in choosing finally a system that made sense for us wasn't just because it was the most cost effective, or because our IT team signed off on it. It was really kind of almost 2 years of understanding what is it that we want, what do we don't want, who do we best align with in terms of values, in terms of operational requirements, in terms of success, and still maintain that okay, bye-bye. I always do that, and then they just the train of thought is gone. So it was a long time of understanding what do we want and what we don't want, and how can we kind of meet each other in the middle. And we knew that with the right partner, it was really also about the relationship. And so again, to point out, those reference calls were so valuable, because a vendor's going to sell you what you want to hear, whereas a reference call, they've got nothing to lose. And so, in fact, one of our they were really at the top of our list at one point. We had a call with one of their biggest clients, and they, based on what we had described about our needs, they actually said to us, the client said, I love them for us, but I don't know that they would work for you because of X, Y, and Z. And so that was the one component. The other thing that's, we keep talking about future fit, but future fit also means fit for now. And so although there was some systems that we went with that had all the bells and whistles, it was intuitive, there was like AI engines in the background, there was a bunch of very cool stuff happening, we actually wouldn't have made use of 50% of the functionality for the next couple of years. And so for us, it didn't really make sense to go with a system like that, because it would have actually just been too overwhelming for where 80% of our business is right now. And so when we talk about that kind of winning recipe, it's only because we know the tastes of our business. And so spending that much time, and Omri said it the other day, measure twice and cut once. That is, we did end up cutting twice, but we measured about 4 times before we cut the second time. So, we kind of like learned our lessons. But it's really about spending a lot of time with the business, because not only to understand their needs, but to really and truly genuinely bring them along on the journey as well.
I think what I heard in your story and what you're sharing here is, beyond the vendor and the partner and the product, they all bring their capabilities and skill sets. A 1-month implementation is unheard of. And Sune, I think 4 months to select one, also not such a long time. So you're being quite hard on yourself. What I think was quite remarkable, and you'll share some examples, is really the skills and capability that you've built into your own team that allowed you to accelerate an implementation of this scale and of this nature. And that's quite encouraging and useful.
Yeah. So, Sune and I don't come from a corporate environment. We're relatively young. I started at Momentum Metropolitan 3 years ago, and Sune a few months thereafter. And that was the beginning of the digital learning team. And so we felt this weight of responsibility to be able to deliver. But what we realized as well is that in implementing and getting to that point where we could implement very quickly, we needed to wear multiple hats. So we weren't just, content developers or project managers or learning designers. We had to do a lot of different things because increasingly, I think learning is moving into the realm of technology. So we're not just learning L&D people, we also are technology people. And if you've spent any time, and I'm married to a developer, so I've spent too much time with the tech side of the world, but it's really about understanding the technology, understanding how you're going to launch this product, how you're going to manage multiple stakeholders, how you're going to influence those multiple stakeholders to adopt your system, and how you're going to communicate and market around that. So we were a team of about 6 at the time of launch, 3 learning designers, a technologist, a multimedia designer, and then Sune as the project manager, and myself. And we suddenly took on all of these roles. So we were curating content. The platform came without content. So we were curating content. We were putting together comms campaigns. We were engaging with business. We were really designing the entire employee experience. Outside of being L&D professionals, we became technology professionals and marketing specialists, and everything rolled into one. And it was incredible what we were able to achieve in that short space of time to launch a platform that is really a technology system before it's a learning system.
Radeshni actually commented now in the chat that having an infinite mindset to being an L&D professional is truly important. We're talking about future fitness, not just for business, but in our own profession.
Definitely.
And L&D professional today looks very different to the past.
Definitely. And I think our team are naturally curious learners and lifelong learners, and they really do embody that spirit of how am I going to get this done? Like, there's never the attitude of, well, it's not really within my role to do that. It's more a case of like, how do we as a team show up and deliver and show the impact and the value for the business.
This a really important lesson and insight that you've achieved, but there's a couple others that you're going to share as well. A couple of lessons learned and recommendations.
Sorry.
Yeah, so just we've just listed 3 challenges. Obviously, there were days where we were pulling our hair out, but in terms of challenges, the one was around change management and buy-in. Like I said, Sune and I joined, and we were immediately kind of saying, well, actually, this isn't the best system for you, and we've got to do this and rewrite the business case and do a lot of forums and a lot of presenting and a lot of convincing that A, that we knew what we were talking about, and B, that what we were going to do was going to be a success. So that was a huge challenge. I think linked to that is our vendor selection process, whilst extensive, was the first of its kind for the group. And so we were kind of, I always use the analogy, flying the plane as we're building it. And for every phase of the project, we were literally flying the plane as we were building it. So we were in the vendor selection process, and the criteria was shifting for ourselves, not as part of the RFP. But similarly with our, who approves the system? Is it a technology that is approved by a group IT function? Is it a learning system that's approved by a human capital executive? Does it live in the business unit? Is it with the CIO? So there was a lot of kind of, we're overlapping multiple worlds and functions. Who ultimately does it live with, So there were lots of issues around that. And then around the technical issues, it's, we have a complex internal system, and we needed our platforms to integrate. And so there was a lot of, and I'm sure all of you know, if you've ever launched something that's with technology, there are always challenges. And so they weren't, the system has never been out of use or down. There's been no downtime at all, but there were challenges in the background that we kind of have had to manage. And then just, to highlight some of our achievements, despite our very extensive vendor process. We were commended by the group on an incredible process, and just really being able to collaborate across business units, across functions, in what ultimately was quite a seamless way, was an achievement for us. And sorry, and then in terms of the project management and collaboration, again, merging of those worlds between learning and technology, but also across multiple business units. So CIOs, heads, HC executives, heads of L&D, and then literally the L&D professionals in the teams as well, who would be using the systems as well. I'm sure I saw Nazir on the call earlier, and he's always been a strong advocate of ours, but he also pushes us and knows exactly what he needs for his business. So, building those strong relationships, I think, has stood us in good stead. And then the way that we approached the second time around of migrating group-wide learning content first was really successful for us, because it took the pressure off of business units to deliver a perfect system to their users. We took that pressure on ourselves, and we worked really hard to deliver a system that was full, that was diverse and varied in terms of content, that wasn't just compliance training. We knew we were never going to win over employees if we launched a brand new system and said, well, now you have to do all of your training here. We migrated. We've got a very popular and successful LeaderFlex product. We moved that library over. We built out and curated courses, hours worth of training and content. And so our approach of launching to group first in a low pressure kind of environment for the business units, bring them on board slowly, and then work with them. So each of our learning designers partnered with a business unit and had meetings with them to help them migrate their content over onto the learning platform as well. We love campaign-driven launches and change management. We'll show you some examples of what we've done there, but that was also really successful. And then, of course, the user system adoption. So we've gone from 0% just over a year ago to close to 90% unique users that have logged onto the system. And obviously, the more users we add, the lower that number becomes, which is frustrating. So it's always a kind of moving target, but we are super happy with the way that the platform has been adopted by employees. And it speaks to a large degree, in part, because of the user friendliness of the platform as well. It's very intuitive to use. In fact, I love the story. One of our business units decided they didn't want to communicate with their business just yet, because they had just implemented something. They felt like their employees had a bit of change fatigue. They didn't want to push them to use a new system. So they did absolutely no communication with their business at all. So the only way that anybody in that business unit would have been able to access the system is if they found the link on one of our intranet sites and or read one of the many comms that internal comms sends out. There was no kind of individual campaigns. In fact, I think we excluded them from some of the change and launch campaigns as well. But a couple of months in, we ran a competition, and you had to kind of comment on one of the discussion boards. And the person that topped our leaderboard for the entire group was an employee from this business unit to whom they had never actually formally been launched to. And it, again, just speaks to the way that, if a platform is user friendly, if it's intuitive, if it's placed at a point of need, you don't actually have to do a lot to convince them to use it. If it adds value to their lives and it's easy to access, then they will come. So I know the build it and they will come principle actually doesn't really apply in a business sense, but in this sense, it did, and it worked for us. We still haven't told them that, so they don't know that
our little secret
are topping our leaderboards, but we love it. So, and then of course, last month we won an international award. It's the Learning Elite Awards. It's run by the Chief Learning Officer Group, and we are super excited to have won bronze. We were top 30 in the world who entered the competition. So, and again, it's a testament to the fact that our platform is meeting the needs of our employees, and we're able to measure that success as well. Thank you for all the claps.
Extremely well done, and worthy recognition.
Thank you.
Again, not thinking don't think you're giving yourselves enough credit from a built and they will come perspective. A great platform, and we've implemented many, does not get engaged with and adopted without really great communication, really relevance when it comes to business content and requirements, and executive buy-in, which you've done because you've had applied good business acumen to engaging your sponsors and stakeholders. So all of the upfront work in ensuring that there's great alignment between what you have built and how you've then marketed has led to great adoption, and I'm sure that the adoption number will continue to rise. But I really enjoyed seeing the campaigns that you've run, which are quite innovative and fun, and they need to be to meet our current audience, which is very different to what we would have had in the past. So keen to see some of those.
Yeah, so exactly to your point, whatever we created needed to be fun, because I think there was a lot of apart from the compliance training being boring and not very well designed and developed, it was a lot of like punishment if you don't, and like carrot and stick stuff. So we wanted learning to be more fun. We created a specific brand around we call it the Learning Hub. And we created a specific brand with these clear illustrations and visuals. And so employees know whenever they receive a mail or they see a screensaver that looks like this, they know who it's coming from. We were quite intentional about using these more illustrative kind of designs that was very different to the corporate look and feel that employees were used to. And we pushed this notion of like, get curious about learning, get curious about your world, the world of opportunities that exists on the Learning Hub for you. So we launched with a very clear group campaign. Again, we did all of these designs ourselves in my team, and we launched. It was about a 7-week campaign to teach employees how to use the platform, but in a fun way. So week 1 would be log on and find the discussion board and post what you're excited about learning. So we get them to use the system, but also they know that there's some sort of element of prize or competition. So I'll show you, this is just one of the videos that we did.
It's time to get curious about learning. To celebrate the launch of our new online learning portal, we'll be releasing launch challenges every week for the next 4 weeks, and you can stand a chance of winning some awesome prizes and vouchers. For your first challenge, visit the online learning portal discussion boards. Look for the Launch Challenge 1 post and comment on what you're most looking forward to in this new world of learning. The person who posts the most creative comment will win. Good luck and see you online.
Yeah, so at this stage, at week 1, we didn't even have a name for our learning platform. We just called it the online learning platform. And I think in week 3 or 4, the competition was give our learning platform a
rename
name.
our platform.
Yeah, so we called it the Learning Hub, our group human capital kind of portal where all of our human capital functionality exists is called the Human Hub. And so the Learning Hub was a really great fit for that. Yeah, so that was our launch, and we got I think we got up to 40%. I can't remember what the stats said in the previous slide, but
39.
We saw, so from 27% in week 1 to 39% by the end of the week of unique logins. And then, Sune, do you want to talk to the next one?
Sure. So this was a few months after our launch. We were actually very happy, and this touches on, Omri, what you mentioned about executive buy-in, where the group human capital, so Kira and my broader team, the GHC executives felt that this is our platform, we are the custodians of this new learning hub that's just launched, and they really want to encourage human capital employees, but of course the group, to use the system, to be compliant, complete the compliance training, but also to drive people towards the Learning Hub. And it was the time of the football or soccer World Cup, and we started a campaign called the Learning World Cup, where divisions of human capital became teams, and they were competing against each other to complete learning that they needed to before the end of the year. So it was a really fun campaign, and you'll see that we're very proud of how it went. And I'll quickly show you just a part of our launch, which is all our executives playing football and encouraging people to learn.
Let's do GHC Learning World Cup.
This is your opportunity to be a team player and embrace your role as a champion of learning in group human capital.
To participate in the Learning World Cup, you'll need to visit the Learning Hub and
complete all of your outstanding governance and regulatory training.
Get curious about other courses to be completed.
Okay, I'll pause it there. But you can see it's like TikTok style, really fun. We had great engagement, and we also offered a lot of support, which I think throughout this journey has been important to us. We want people to feel empowered and able to use the system however they need to, whether it's learning admin or just learners using the system to learn. So in this, we have a Teams channel where people can ask questions and pretty much get live responses. We have an inbox, and in this case we actually had learning hours every week where people could dial in, ask questions, or just kind of use that time to learn together. So I think that was part of the success of the campaign, and also just that it was fun and topical for the time.
Yeah, and then as we said, September was our 1 year birthday. And so we used the hashtag how have you become 1 year smarter since the launch of the Learning Hub, which was actually generated by ChatGPT as a hashtag. And so don't be afraid of using AI to write your copy for you. Yeah, this was also a great opportunity for us to thank our employees for the success of the platform, but also to get feedback from them. So again, we ran a competition. We said, use the discussion boards to share your feedback, what's worked, what hasn't, what do you love about it. And this is just one of many campaigns that we've implemented across the year. We have a content library. Reese is on the call. He's our account person with that organization, and we launch new content every month that's curated by our team. We kind of revamp and refresh our compliance training, and so important for us was to get feedback, what's working and what isn't. So we'll share that on the next slide.
Yeah, again, unheard of stats. I think 67% in 5 weeks, and you said 90% from the start of the project. So the entire organization having had access to this. Are you elated to some of the feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, it really does speak to the platform being able to meet the needs of our employees where they are now. We are all digital individuals. We use WhatsApp to communicate. We are using Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or X or whatever it is to engage with others. We are working remotely, and so whatever learning system we were going to implement, it needed to be on that level. It needed to be easily accessible, easy to use, easy to maintain for us. And so the feedback is really a testament to the platform, but also to the way that we kind of meet the needs of our learners at a point of need. And what we haven't shared is that, the platform integrates into Teams. So when you're enrolled into a course, you get a notification on Teams. There's a mobile app, which we actually haven't even pushed to users as yet, but you can learn offline on your mobile device as well. And every kind of quarter, there are new features and functionality that is being launched. And so we're able to kind of continuously offer, new features to our business and to employees.
Yeah, actually a question from Patricia in the chat around the mobile accessibility, which you've said is available, which is great. And
Adobe does have an app that learners can easily access training on. And I've seen recently we've launched a few new courses, and then it's like I'm getting a notification on Teams and via my phone. So there's like a lot of points of contact for you to be reminded of learning or to access your learning. So yeah, mobile friendly.
And just to emphasize again,
like where they're at.
We were a team of 6, and to launch something of this nature was really a big thank. I just want to publicly thank my team as well for being able to do so well, and to kind of just get stuck in and have the trust that we were going to do this and successfully. So yeah, just wanted to thank them as well.
Well deserved praise. Maybe then a final question to you, Kira, before we see if there's any questions from the participants, is what's next in the journey? How do you continue to deliver value and return on investment from an investment like this?
Yeah, so our next big project that we have already kicked off is what we're calling our Insights project. And it's we're not sure what the solution is yet, because we're still kind of conceptualizing a proof of concept. But what we need to be able to do is to measure learning more effectively, and to present that back to employees and to business in a way that's meaningful and that can derive insights in an intuitive and predictive way. So we are, and really we discovered it because we were trying to run a competition at a festival that we were hosting internally. And we wanted to award a prize to employees that had completed all their compliance training. And we couldn't see in a simple, easy way where if somebody had ticked all the boxes, basically. And so that was really a big prompt for us to make reporting a lot easier. We're integrating it in. We are building out a live BBBE scorecard, and we're pulling all of our employee data, and we want learning data to kind of have that same level of rich insight, so that we can make more data-driven decisions, so that employees can track and manage their development more easily, and so that business can start seeing the value that learning and development has on their employees as well. So that's where we are going to next. So maybe in a year's time we'll be able to share that that project with you.
The learning analytics story emerging.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well done again, and certainly we're all learning with you in the area of learning analytics and value realization from these projects. Big responsibility of L&D professionals to fast track and accelerate capability and skills within business, and having a good platform to start with and an inspired and competent team is one way to get there.
Thanks, Omri.
Thank you.